Yes, it does come in black. Here's a look at the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the JLA Build-A-Figure Plastic Man Batman. A playboy billionaire by day, Bruce Wayne's double life affords him the comfort of a life without financial worry, a loyal butler turned guardian, and the perfect base of operations in the ancient network of caves beneath the family's sprawling estate. By night, however, though, he sheds all pretense, dons his iconic scalloped cape and pointed cowl, and takes to the shadowy streets, skies, and rooftops of Gotham City. This Cape Crusader is a carbon copy of the one that we got before from the DC Multiverse 3 Jokers line, as it's essentially using the exact same body, colored slightly different. The tape measure is going to tell us that he's still going to stand the same at about 7¼ inches in height, where the JLA's Batman is about 18½ centimeters tall. Not sure really where I put that 3 Jokers Batman, but at least I have a stand-in now for comparisons. Here's what the figure, oh, here we go again. Here's what the figure looks like with the Nightfall Batman. I know it's always the one I seem to go to, but it does drive home one point, though, is that I feel like the Batman body that they chose for the JLA Batman. Now, this is the Batman from the 90s. This is Batman that would be seen in the Total Justice video game and the subsequent figure releases. This is also very heavily influenced by, as well, the '89 Batman movie. That being said, I do feel like the Batman body that they chose is way too big. Not that I'm necessarily advocating for Nightfall Batman, because, I mean, really, if you look at that figure's gotten mileage, what, now 4 times? He's gotten released now as a black cowl version, a cell-shaded SDCC release, and hey, he's even tussled with Bane. So it's not necessarily the case that I'm pushing heavily that they need to keep continuing to go back to this body, go back to this well, but I feel like, though, for this to be the JLA Batman, it's just too big of a body that they're choosing. Speaking of other bodies, here's bringing the other figures that we've looked at so far, because keeping in mind, again, this is the 4th figure before we start to build up Plastic Man. So here's what the figure looks like with the blue Superman, not Batman, blue Superman, John Stewart, and of course, here's also what he looks like with Hook Hand Aquaman. It's kind of funny, I would mention a couple of times the Total Justice figure line, when that original Batman actually had a gray suit and a blue cowl. Either way, though, the things that come include with the Cape Crusader are all the necessary things in order to complete Plastic Man. And before we complete Mr. Elasticity, let's actually look at the other things that come included with Batman. First, while we're on the topic of a black suit and a black cowl, yes, to come include with Batman, you get yourself just that. The Cape Crusader is featured very nicely here, where it looks like Wonder Woman consoling his shoulder. I don't know why Batman's so sad, but apparently Wonder Woman felt the need to put her hand on his shoulder. Down below, it does say Batman, and then below that, it says JLA. It's only until really you flip around the back of the card do you realize his real name is Bruce Wayne. Get out of town, really? His real name is Bruce Wayne. What you're also getting treated to is one thing that's consistent, it seems, with all the trading cards, a very generic read-up. And while I could excuse it certainly for Batman, all the other cards, like the Aquaman, for example, the Energy Blue Suit Superman, none of them actually had read-ups on the back that had anything pertaining to that specific look for the character. Batman, yeah, you could easily get away with the idea that he's a billionaire by day, he fights crime at night, yada, 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 and at least that's somewhat expressed here with the paragraph read that you read on the back of the card. You need to read it? I already read it. I beat you to it. Let's move that card off to the side. Nice looking card, by the way. The figure, yes, comes included with a display stand. Display stand is just as black as Batman himself. Does have the DC logo printed down below here, and then a peg off to the side that can plug into either one of Batman's boots. You have one peg, you have 2 of Batman's boots. So you have to choose which boot you want to plug this onto the bottom of. Move it off to the side. The figure also comes included with a grapple gun. Now, the grapple gun, I know we should have really started to talk things first about Plastic Man. I just want to... I mean, it's so very little that we get with Batman. I want to run through these things first. He gets himself a grapple gun that we've gotten before. This grapple gun also looks very much like the '89 grapple gun. Obviously not as big of a handle on the back, but like if you were to look at like this part of it, it does very much look like the one that Michael Keaton would have had as Batman. The grapple line, unfortunately, is molded in just the black plastic, so the rest of it all kind of looks as one molded piece. Yes, they probably could have painted this. I mean, I don't know how much time they really would have spent to paint like both the rope as well as the hook on the end of it. suppose you probably could go in there as well if you're a talented painter. Not that you really need to be a talented painter. You literally only just need to paint this point to this point and just not make a mess anywhere and just paint the hook on the end of it. This is a soft plastic. I mean, I would love if they could really have just given him a grapple gun really without the line, but I guess if you are one that likes figure photography, or hey, why not? You like just to display your figures doing something interesting, this at least gives you the idea of giving something interesting to Batman, even though it's pretty soft and plastic. It does fit into his hands, although he only really has this hand here. This hand is going to be helping anybody, really. Basically, you just take your figure. I mean, not that I'm going to spend a lot of time showing you guys how something is held in a figure's hand. Basically, you just take the handle, dowel it in there, and then Batman's got himself a grapple line. While Batman's shooting off his lines, the figure also comes included, like I said, all the necessary parts for building Plastic Man. Now, where we have left off, humbled viewers, is that the figure got this, well, this is how as far as we've gotten so far from Plastic Man. The lower legs we just recently got with John Stewart. The upper torso came included with the Energy Superman. The only thing has been left off, though, is the arms. Those arms came included with Aquaman. I haven't yet put them on because I wasn't sure really how committed these would be. Once I plugged them in place, would I be able to remove them easy enough? And we'll all kind of find out together because I haven't yet done this. Basically, you got your regular arms, though, that came included with Aquaman. But what you do get, though, with Batman is these really cool-looking arms. These arms themselves have much more stretched-out limbs here for Plastic Man. The actual arms themselves don't look like they have a wire built into them, so you can't really bend these. I suppose if you wanted to, you could submerge these in a hot water bath. You could also take a few passes with your hairdryer just to soften up the plastic. You could probably bend these a little bit better if you wanted to. But he has one long arm, and then he has this pretty cool looking lasso arm. He's basically holding his own arm, and he's basically, and again, he's making a lasso. Could be also good for catching butterflies, but you'd need a net. Come on, there's no way you could catch a butterfly without a net blocking that off. Or you could also blow bubbles. He could blow his own bubbles. Now these attach. You obviously have a peg right there, and you got yourself the shoulder sockets. If I was to commit to the idea of plugging in one, so that's one arm. And then you basically take the other arm and just plug that in place. Now, I don't know yet which route I want to go when it comes to attaching these, whether I want to go with the crazier looking arms or if I want to commit to maybe one arm just normal and the other arm's a little longer like this. I myself, I'm not really sure which way I want to display the figures just yet. I am curious, though. I didn't attach this one completely, but I did attach this one fairly securely. Okay, so they're fairly easy to remove. That was one of my biggest worries. Popping that off, yeah, it seems to come off pretty easy. So we can go ahead and we can attach the other alternate arm just to show you guys what it looks like. So we're going to plug in the regular normal arm that came included with Aquaman. We're going to plug in the longer arm that came included with Batman. So yeah, you can mix and match them if you really wanted to. The idea of mixing and matching doesn't just stop there. Oh no, it doesn't. What you could also do too is that the figure comes included with two different alternate head sculpts for Plastic Man. You get a regular one that just is a smiling Plastic Man with the goggles there on the front of his face. Nice little touch of detail is the fact that he did give that little bit of color and reflection that he always has in the comics. Nicely sculpted. But then he also comes included with this head sculpt. And honestly, though, between the two, I would love to go with this head sculpt, I think, instead, just because it's got not only the longer neck, but it gives a much more exaggerated face sculpt. I know he's a little old now, but I mean, thinking about this, Bruce Campbell would have made a perfect Plastic Man. Who's with me? Plastic Man? Bruce Campbell? I mean, he just seems like he's made for the role, although obviously now he's a little bit older. Of the two heads, again, these are going to be plugging in the exact same way. So if you wanted to, you can go with just the regular head sculpt. That's going to plug onto the ball joint. And then again, if you want to, just pop that off and replace it with what I feel. And don't let me push you in the direction of going with this head sculpt, but you can also go with this one too. So lots of different cool things you can do with it. The only thing he doesn't have, I mean, this whole time of changing out everything with his arms and his head, you're still going to be sort of stuck with the same regular legs, which I can understand for the way that they plugged in place. I really did have to kind of make sure that they worked all the way on there so that when I was moving the legs around, for example, they weren't going to pop off. I can understand why these would be not things that you'd be wanting to swap out. So again, he's got the longer arm, he's got the shorter arm again, I've already kind of showed you everything. You can just change out the parts. We're going to kind of get more into looking at him in a later review. I'm just going to move him off to the side for at least for the time being. Let's go ahead and remove also the grapple gun. We have no more need for it. We're just going to put it off to the side. Okay, so getting a closer look at Batman, obviously this guy is simply just a recoloring. It is even in the case that they retooled anything. I went back and I looked at images online of the Three Jokers Batman because I know I have the Three Jokers Batman. I mean, hey, I did a review of him. I can't find where I put him right now. They haven't tooled anything different. I mean, the emblem there on the front of his chest, even though, again, very much heavily influenced by the 89 Batman, this is also raised from the rest of the surface of his torso. That was on the original Three Jokers Batman, as well to be said, with a very 89 inspired utility belt. Also was on the original Joker, or the original Batman from the Three Jokers line. So nothing really is necessarily changed here other than cosmetic changes. You know, the cowl and the rest of the outfit works well, I feel, in black. You get a much more shorter pointed cowl this time around. And I do like the way they've textured this. The original Three Jokers Batman also had this as well. It gives it kind of more of a leather look to the way they've sculpted the cowl. So it's not just a smooth plastic. It works well. There are areas, though, you can see just underneath the cowl where I've got some black bleeding from the pointed of the nose. You could say, if you wanted to justify this, that it looks a little bit like it's shadowing. So, okay, we'll say it's a little bit of shadowing. There are a few little areas there also on the side that the cowl isn't completely painted. You can see very much the skin tone is kind of bled onto the black. So some of the paint isn't the cleanest. But again, like the shadowing, you could say, oh, okay, that's some shadowing underneath the nose. That's maybe one of the reasons why they've done that. I mean, it's just obviously a case with it's bled onto the flesh tone. The face sculpt is okay. I mean, as well for the body. There's nothing really I would have issues with other than two areas. It's his arms and it's his legs. And both of the problems have the exact same problem, is that if you've seen my review of the Joker, the Penguin, just recently we had a look at the classics Penguin and we looked at both versions of him. The black jacket Penguin had the exact same problem. They decided just to go in there and start painting things blue. In this case, kind of more of a dark purplish blue, but still blue. Everything on Batman's body is pretty much just kept to black until you get to looking at like his lower shin guards, which again look very much like the Michael Keaton boots. But again, like just they have this blue over here that just makes no sense really when you're looking at the consistency of the rest of the body. All the body is black, including his cape. The back of his body, to be fair though, does have a few little things that are changed, like his trunks, for example, are more of a matte black, where his legs are obviously more of a shiny. But that's fine. I just don't understand why they would go in there and feel the need to paint this blue. I mean, it'd mean that there's nowhere blue on the rest of the body. And it's also that kind of blue, too, that stands out. When you're looking at everything else on the palette of Batman here, everything's kept to really dark colors until you start to see his gauntlets. And then you start to see his shin guards. And you ask the question I'm probably asking, why they felt the need to paint these blue. Everything else on Batman is okay if you can overlook the fact that it's just too big of a Batman, honestly. If this is going to be a Batman that's going to fit in well with like the 80s or 90s style figures or the Total Justice style characters, I just don't think that this is the right body they should have gone with. I feel like, not to say that Nightfall would have been a perfect candidate. I mean, there's probably, again, other Batmans that they probably could have chose. I always keep continuing to say, the Batman from Zur-En-Arrh. Zur-En-Arrh would have been an ideal Batman. Obviously, they would have had to tool a lot of things for the body. This would be the most direct approach. From point A to point B, the easiest would be simply just to take a mold and cast it differently in a plastic color. Now, obviously, they just chose Three Jokers Batman. I just don't think it's the right size of Batman body. It's just a really big Batman that doesn't always necessarily scale really well. This may not be a Batman I'm going to display with the other Rogues Gallery. If that is the choice I want to go with, I'm honestly going to go with either the blue cowl or even though I haven't yet picked it up, the black cowl release of the Nightfall Batman. For what he is, he's painted decently, but again, like a lot of this is really just only needing to paint the emblem, and for that, it's painted decently. You only need to really paint the utility belt, and again, doesn't look bad at all. I don't see any real bleeding of paint at all. But again, like, I just don't feel like it was necessary at all to add this purplish blue. It doesn't seem to belong at all on the figure because it looks a little bit more jarring. Now, if you are familiar with this mold, or a mold similar to this, because we've also gotten ourselves a couple of variations, like a Hush Batman did have a similar style of head, as well as the Vampires Batman. I just happen to have actually the Vampires Batman right over here. Not that necessarily I was going to be bringing him in, but, you know, again, if you're familiar with that size of Batman body, they've done this about 3-4 times now using this specific mold. I think this might be the only time that we've actually gotten the Three Jokers Batman cast in a different coloring of plastic. But anyways, his articulation is going to be exactly the same as those other Batman. So instead of having a ball joint where the head is separately from the rest of the neck and the head are all one piece. So when you're moving the neck, in essence, you're basically moving the entire head at the same time. The head does look up that high. It does look down. Yeah, okay. And you can also move it back and forth as well. You can also rotate, again, the head all the way around. Batman's arms do rotate, and even though he does have a cape that drapes off to the sides of his shoulders, it doesn't seem at all to hinder the movement in his arms. So you can move his arms out, And again, you can move him back and forth. The figure doesn't have, well, he has a swivel in his bicep. The figure does have a double hinge in the elbow. But what he doesn't have, though, is a swivel in his glove. Batman tend not to have that. He does, though, have a swivel in his hands. Yes, you can rotate those all the way around and you can hinge them back and forth. Batman's upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. The lower abdomen area is, yes, going to be on a ball joint. Legs do split out. Still, you got these softer plastic trunks. So, not that he necessarily has a figure diaper. I feel like they've actually done a better job with these figures recently where they don't feel like there's as much bulk here in the trunks. Legs do split. You can take them, move them forward. You can move them back. Swivel at the top of the thigh. The double hinge, of course, in the knee. No articulation in the boot, but you can still move the ankle up and down and back and forth. There's, of course, the toe articulation. And, of course, there are the pegs on the undersides of Batman's boots. Things I like about the figure, if you're keeping this guy separate from everybody else, I think the head sculpt is still good. I liked it initially when we looked at the Three Jokers Batman. I don't think my feelings at all have changed about it. It's just a good Batman, but it just doesn't scale really well with a lot of other figures. This would not be necessarily a figure that I'm going to go to as my definitive Batman to be displayed with, say, the other League members, or even to be displayed with the Batman Rogues. This is a Batman that's going to be standing probably on his own. And that's probably going to make Batman really sad. I can see now why Wonder Woman was consoling Batman. She's saying, I know you're not going to scale in with the rest of the Batman figures, but it's okay. I believe in you. Even though, yeah, the Batman isn't going to be the one that I'm going to choose when it comes to displaying. I like the idea of a black suit Batman. I just don't think I would have chosen this particular Batman body. And of course, there are some notable things as well. Even though, like, I like the sculpting of it, there are certain elements of him that don't quite jive. So, like, the torso is more of a matte plastic. The trunks area are, of course, matte black. So, like, you've got shiny arms on the sides, you got a shiny abdomen, you got shiny legs. There are a few little things from a sculpting standpoint where plastics don't quite jive with one another. And, of course, the biggest one is the fact they went in and painted in, like, the gauntlets and the knees. I just don't think I would have necessarily done that. Keep everything in black. Batman likes things in black. That then to give himself purple boots, I don't know if that was his choice or Alfred's choice. Either way, whoever decided, hey, let's give ourselves blue boots or purple boots while everything else on the figure is all black, I just don't think was the right choice. It's a nice Batman. I think if not for the fact that the figure did come included with, of course, the necessary needs in order to complete Plastic Man, which, of course, we will be looking at in the next review. If not for that, and this guy was sold separately, I myself probably wouldn't have picked him up. While I do like the choice of colors that they made for this Batman, I don't, though, like the choice of the Batman body. It's always really been a big struggle when it comes to this particular Batman, and this Batman also shares the same problems as the Hush Batman. This Batman, granted, is being used from the Three Jokers Batman, but the Hush Batman also has the same problem. It's too big of a Batman, and unless you have it with certain figures, this figure ends up just ultimately casting a shadow on those other figures. Now, I have this Batman, or the Three Jokers Batman, at one point I had him displayed with the Three Jokers, because that was part of the line. But to pick this Batman, of all things, and have this displayed with the rest of the League, then unless you have all equally sized characters, like if you were to take a Hal Jordan Green Lantern, for example, I would never really display it with this Batman because this Batman just comes across way too big. And that's the problem that faces with this particular mold and the Hush Batman. It's just too big of a Batman to then deal with displaying with the other figures. If you have them on their own, they look good. On its own, this is a nice looking Batman. I like the sculpting of the cowl. The cape looks good. And other than some questionable choices for blue that they put for both the gauntlet blades and as well his boots, all in all, Batman looks good. I just don't think it's going to be a Batman I'm going to ever really pull and say, this is going to be the Batman I'm going to be displayed with the JLA members. All the other Batman, or all the other Justice League members we've looked at from this wave so far, all of them look like they could fit in well with one another. They're not overly big, they're not overly muscular, they're just the right size to accommodate a Justice League or JLA display. This is a Batman that kind of unfortunately stands out, and it's unfortunate too that because they chose this particular Batman body that you're sort of stuck to pick this one up if you're looking to complete Plastic Man. If you have no desired interest at all to collect Plastic Man parts, and I don't understand why you wouldn't want to build Plastic Man. Plastic Man is awesome. But if you're looking just to only selectively pick out, like, say, Aquaman, and maybe you like the look of Energy Suit Superman or the Blue Suit Superman, then maybe you could just easily pick those one up and pass on Batman altogether. But to get the Plastic Man, you're unfortunately hooked to be pulled in and buying a Batman that you may not necessarily want for your collection. I like the look of this guy, but he's not going to be part of my collection when it comes to displaying with the rest of the League. I already kind of have a Batman in mind, and it's usually, I know, it's usually the Nightfall Batman. until there's a better Batman coming around. That's the Batman I go to when it comes to displaying with the League. This isn't going to be the Batman to do that. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And between the 3 Jokers Batman and the Hush Batman, do you feel like those Batman bodies are way too big to be displayed with other figures? Or do you like the idea that Batman's a big towering man of muscle? Let me know how you feel about this mold down below in the comments section. Now that I'm actually taking a tally and looking at the lay of the land, yeah, we have finished all 4 of the figures. We've now completed Plastic Man. Don't worry, though. We will be looking at Plastic Man in his own separate review. In the meantime, if backing up just a bit, if you did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you want to see the review of Plastic Man, then yes, please and thank you. Hit that subscribe button down below, and equally, please hit that bell notification. It helps you, it helps me, it helps the channel to grow, and make sure, of course, you're coming back to check out that review of Plastic Man. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.